You just dropped $340 on a backpack, 3 pairs of shoes, and a graphing calculator your kid will lose by October. And you haven't even gotten to the school fees email yet. Picture this. It's a Tuesday night in August. You're sitting at your kitchen table with your laptop open, 17 browser tabs of school supply lists, and a calculator app you keep switching back to because the numbers don't feel real. You make good money. Not rich, but good. 70, 80,000 a year, maybe more with your spouse's income combined. On paper, you should be fine. So, why does back-to-school season feel like getting mugged in slow motion? By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why a decent middle-class income in 2026 doesn't buy what it used to, why back-to-school has quietly become one of the most dangerous financial events of the year for American families, and what the number really is that determines whether you come out of September okay or underwater. My name is Marcus, and I spend way too much time thinking about why people who are doing everything right still feel broke. If you're someone who wants to actually understand the money instead of just feeling anxious about it, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you see your own budget differently by the end. Today I'm going to walk you through the real numbers behind back-to-school spending in 2026, a household that looks a lot like yours, and the uncomfortable math connecting 1 August to your entire financial future. Let's start with the myth. Most people think back-to-school spending is a nuisance. Annoying, sure, but manageable. You buy some notebooks, a backpack, maybe some new sneakers, and you move on with your life. That's the story we tell ourselves every single year. But here's the uncomfortable truth. According to recent consumer survey data, the average American family is expected to spend around $922 per household this back-to-school season. $922. That's not for the whole school year. That's just to get through the front door in September. And it gets worse. Nearly half of parents surveyed say they expect to spend more than they did last year. Not because they want to, because they feel like they have to. Per-child spending is climbing somewhere between 6 and almost 12% year over year, depending on the survey you look at, and that's outpacing general inflation. Let that sink in. The cost of sending your kid back to school is rising faster than the cost of living itself. So what's going on here? Why is one specific week of spending outrunning the broader economy? Part of it is what economists call category-specific inflation. School supplies, clothing, and electronics have their own pricing pressure separate from your grocery bill. But a bigger part of it, honestly, is social pressure dressed up as necessity. The backpack has to be the right brand. The shoes have to be the right shoes. Nobody wants their kid to be the one without the thing everyone else has. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. This isn't hitting everyone equally. Families in cities like Chicago are reportedly spending hundreds of dollars more per child than the national average. That's not a typo. Hundreds more, just based on where you happen to live and what your local school culture expects. So the number in your head, that $900 and some national average? For a lot of you watching this, your real number is already higher. And you probably already know it because you just lived through August. Now, let's talk about who's actually driving this spending increase. You'd think it would be lower-income families scraping to keep up. But survey data actually shows higher-income households posting some of the biggest increases in per-child spending. That's lifestyle creep wearing a backpack. When your neighbor's kid shows up with the newest tablet, the newest cleats, the newest everything, the pressure doesn't care what your income bracket is. It just gets louder. So here's the uncomfortable truth we need to sit with before we go any further. Back-to-school season isn't really about school supplies. It's a pressure test. It's the 1 week a year where your income, your values, your social comparisons, and your actual bank balance all collide at the same cash register. And how you handle that collision says a lot more about your financial future than most people realize. Let's make this real. I want you to meet the Ortiz family. Now, the Ortizes aren't real, but they're built from real data, a composite of the kind of household that shows up again and again in consumer spending research. Combined household income, $78,000 a year. 2 kids, 1 in middle school, 1 starting high school. A mortgage, a car payment, the usual. On paper, solidly middle class. Comfortable, even. In August, here's what actually happened in the Ortiz household. School supplies and basic classroom materials, $140. Not bad. Clothing and shoes because kids grow, and nobody wants to send their teenager to school in pants that stop at the ankle, $310. A new laptop for the high schooler because the old one finally died and the school requires digital submissions now, $520. Sports fees and equipment for one kid's soccer season, $195. And then the quiet killer, miscellaneous school fees. Technology fee, activity fee, yearbook, a field trip deposit. Add it up and that's another $160. Total for the Ortiz family in 1 month, $1,325. That's not a typo, and that's not an outlier. That's what happens when you actually itemize instead of just guessing. $1,325 in a single month, on top of the mortgage, the car payments, the groceries, the electric bill, everything else that doesn't pause just because September showed up. Here's what most people don't realize. That number represents roughly 2% of the Ortiz family's entire annual gross income, spent in about 3 weeks. 2% of a year's income, gone in 3 weeks. If you did that every month, you'd blow through your entire salary in about 50 weeks with nothing left for rent, food, or gas. Obviously nobody does that every month, but that's exactly why August and September hit so hard. It's a full month's worth of financial pressure compressed into a few violent weeks. And where did the Ortizes get that $1,300? For a lot of families like them, according to recent consumer credit data, it doesn't come from a dedicated back-to-school fund, sitting patiently in a savings account. It comes from the credit card. It comes from dipping into whatever cushion exists in the checking account and hoping the next paycheck covers the gap. It comes from quietly pausing the retirement contribution for a month or two, telling yourself you'll catch up later. But here's the part that will blow your mind. Later almost never comes the way people plan. Recent reporting on household finances shows a growing number of Americans cutting back or pausing retirement savings specifically because everyday and seasonal expenses, housing, healthcare, and yes, back-to-school costs, keep jumping the line ahead of the future. Not because people don't value their retirement. Because the emergency in front of you always feels more real than the retirement 30 years away. That's not nothing. That's a pattern. And patterns compound. So let's talk about compounding because this is where the real damage happens. Not in August, but decades later. Here's where it gets ugly. Let's say, instead of pausing retirement contributions during back-to-school season, the Ortiz family had kept investing that same amount they diverted to cover the gap, let's call it $300 a month, for just 2 months out of the year, every year, starting when their oldest was born. According to long-term market return data that Vanguard and similar firms publish regularly, a diversified stock portfolio has historically returned somewhere around 7% annually after inflation over multi-decade periods. Run that $600 a year through 7% compound growth for 18 years, the span of one kid's childhood, and you're looking at roughly $19,000. Not from some dramatic investment, from $600 a year that most families just quietly absorb into credit card debt instead. Now here's the acceleration effect most people never see coming. It took that hypothetical family about 12 years to build their first $10,000 in that account. But it only took about 6 more years, half the time, to go from $10,000 to $19,000. That's not a coincidence. That's compound growth doing what compound growth does. The first stretch is slow and boring and feels pointless. The second stretch moves fast, almost sneaky fast, because your money starts making money on top of money that's already making money. But here's the thing. Most families never get to see that second, faster stretch. Because instead of investing steadily, they're stuck in a different kind of compounding, debt compounding. And debt compounds in the opposite direction, working against you instead of for you. This is where the national data gets genuinely alarming. Recent Federal Reserve Bank research shows that 90-plus day credit card delinquencies have climbed significantly between 2022 and now, even as headline spending numbers look stable. Stable spending, rising serious delinquency, those two facts sitting next to each other should make you uncomfortable. It means the averages are lying to you. The economy looks fine on the surface while a growing number of households are quietly drowning underneath it. Does that sound familiar? Spending looking normal, debt creeping up in the background, nobody talking about it out loud because everyone assumes they're the only one struggling? You are not the only one. Recent Fed household debt data shows that around 4.7% of all outstanding consumer debt is in some stage of delinquency right now, with serious delinquency rising specifically in categories like credit cards and auto loans, the exact categories that back-to-school spending tends to bleed into. And here's the part that really matters. Analysts studying this data keep pointing to the same conclusion. The stress isn't spread evenly across everyone. It's concentrated, hitting lower-income households and certain regions much harder than the average American, the headlines describe. Which means if you've ever looked at a consumer spending as healthy headline and thought, then why does my August feel like a financial gut punch? You weren't wrong. You were looking at a number that was never built to describe your specific situation in the first place. So, let's bring this back to you, sitting at your kitchen table with your 17 browser tabs open. Here's the uncomfortable truth this whole video has been building toward. Back-to-school season isn't dangerous because of the backpack, or the shoes, or even the calculator. It's dangerous because it's a recurring, predictable, once-a-year gut punch that most families never actually plan for, and unplanned recurring expenses are exactly the kind of thing that quietly eats your retirement, one paused contribution at a time. Here's what most people don't realize until it's too late. It's not the $1,100 in August that ruins you. It's the $1,100 in August, plus the $1,100 next August, plus the one after that, plus the holidays, plus the car repair, plus every other just this once expense. All of them landing on the same household, year after year, each one quietly displacing money that could have compounded into real financial security. So what's the fix? It's not stop buying school supplies. Your kid needs shoes. Your kid needs a working laptop. This isn't about deprivation. It's about intention. The families who come out of August okay aren't the ones who spend less out of guilt. They're the ones who saw this coming. They built a specific back-to-school sinking fund months in advance, setting aside $60, $80, $100 a month starting in January so that by August, the money is already sitting there waiting instead of getting pulled from a place that was supposed to be for your future. That's the entire difference between the family that pauses their retirement contribution every August and the family that doesn't even notice back-to-school season hit their budget. Same income, same kids, same shoes. Completely different trajectory, 20 years from now. You're not failing because back-to-school season stresses you out. The math genuinely is stacked to make this feel like an emergency every single year. Rising per-child costs, social pressure, and an economy where the averages hide who's actually struggling. You're not bad with money because a random Tuesday in August left you staring at your bank account. You're reacting exactly the way a normal person reacts to a system that was never designed to be predictable in the first place, even though, mathematically, it's one of the most predictable expenses of your entire year. So, here's what I want you to take from this. Somewhere between now and next January, before the back-to-school ads start again, put a number on it. Whatever your real back-to-school cost was this year, track it, write it down, and start putting away a fraction of it every month starting now. Not because you failed this year, because next year you get to be the family that already saw it coming. Let that sink in. The families who build wealth aren't the ones who never get hit with big expenses. They're the ones who stop letting big expenses surprise them. Drop a like if this hit close to home, and I'll see you in the next one.